Hello, folks. Just a quick word to say that this episode of the podcast was recorded before the death of Queen Elizabeth II, so do please bear that in mind when author Suzie Edge and myself are discussing her new book, Mortal Monarchs, which dives into the deaths of various British royals over the centuries. That aside, this is a really fun discussion about TikTok for authors, so if you're looking for hints and tips about that, you're in the right place. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, a special deep dive episode that we record exclusively for our wonderful patrons on Patreon and our academates on the Bestseller Academy. And it's a really, really special one because this is someone who supported us on Patreon and over on the Bestseller Experiment group and our Facebook group as well, because this is Suzie Edge, whose new book, her debut non-fiction book, Mortal Monarchs, is out now, out this week basically, and it's about how the monarchs of England and Scotland met their grisly deaths. So it's violence, infections, overindulgence, regicide. It's terrific, fun for all the family, and if you've ever loved horrible histories, it's very much along those lines, but for grown-ups. And that's very much what Suzie's been talking about on TikTok, which is what we're going to talk about today. Suzie's huge success on TikTok, because Suzie has about 250,000 followers, 5.5 million likes. And if you're like me, I've tried TikTok. I felt like an old man at a disco. I felt very wrong, and I sort of ran away from it. So I'm wondering if I should go back to it. So I'm going to ask Suzie about this. We've got some listener questions as well. But Suzie, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
Oh, thanks, Mark. What an introduction. And you've made me feel all sort of giddy because, I mean, you summed it up so well. Yeah, I'm so well. I'm really well. Thank you.
Wonderful stuff. Well, look, there's first of all, tell us about Mortal Monarchs, because you are a doctor. You've trained as a junior doctor. You've specialised in things like infectious diseases. How did the book come about?
It was really quite a long time in the making. You know, the first one, it always just bubbles along under the surface for a long time. But I was working as a doctor and became pretty disillusioned, actually, a few years ago, working in the hospital. And I found that I was often sitting in the tea room, at break time, telling stories, and I've always done that. In the operating theatre, I was starting telling people stories about the history of what we were doing, and I'd get these blank looks like, "Would you just get on with what we're doing?" And I realised that what I needed to do was, I've always written scientific papers, and they're very specifically, there's a way of doing it, and it's pretty dry. And I thought I want to branch out. I want to tell stories elsewhere. I've always sort of written stuff, but never published anything, never done anything with it. One of these people that got to 20K and moved on to something else, That's very much why the Bestseller Experiment struck a chord with me, because I was one of those people. So at that point, I thought, I've got to do something else. I've got to maybe go and learn to write in a different way and research in a different way. So I went off and did a master's in modern history whilst I was working as a doctor, which was completely mad, but it was good fun. And the kids were watching Horrible Histories at the time, I have to admit. It's definitely an influence.
Great show. Yeah.
Great show. And so I started to put the two together, the medicine, the anatomy, all those gory stories that I love telling. And one day so I had this game with my kids where when they were younger, if we were out and about and we saw a date, I would say, so who was on the throne in 1415 or something like that, and they would answer, and it got a bit dull because they were really good at it. So after a while, I started saying, "And how did they die?" And then it just turned. I thought, I've got to do something with this, because there's so many. Every single monarch has a good death story. Yeah. Weirdly, every single one. And so, that's how it turned into what it turned into.
Brilliant. And people would be going, hang on, Horrible Histories is also a series of books, of course. I do know that. Mm-hmm. My kids had the books as well. And of course, we all know the song, William Henry, all of that. But that sounds absolutely amazing. And I love all these kind of gory details, which you've put onto TikTok. And I've been looking at your TikTok page, and it's just so many wonderful videos where you just share a little nugget that makes people go, "Oh my God," and they keep coming back for more. So tell me about how you got started with TikTok. What inspired you to try TikTok, and had you tried any other social media before that?
Yeah, since the dawn of social media, I've been interested in it and how we can use it in terms of marketing, and that's completely wild and different from being a doctor. And they don't really go together, not in the UK anyway. So I've always had that interest in marketing, and I thought that TikTok, when I saw TikTok was becoming a thing just before COVID and lockdown, people were starting to take an interest. I thought, I'm going to get on there and just try and develop, because I was interested in I was interested in writing and selling books and all that sort of stuff from the beginning. So it's always been a little bit by design, an awful lot of luck, but there has been the design in that I could see it was going to be something. But at the same time, I could see that, like any other social media platform, they start off with the kids. They start off with the kids talking to each other, the 14-year-olds dancing and things like that. And then the age of the users goes up and different ideas come along. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go and do my own thing. And I started by making videos about, so you can see how many followers you've got. So I had shared some videos about the bagpipes, because I live in the Highlands and they were going about then before COVID, and got some interest there. And then I had seen that I think it was 1485 followers. And I was like, 1485, that's a date I recognise. So I made a video about the Battle of Bosworth, just because that's what I'm into. And that grew from there, just, oh, look, I've now got 13 followers, sorry, made a video about that. So that's how I saw how it could be used without the dancing in the bikini, basically. And I went because that wasn't going to happen.
That's where I was going wrong, yeah.
And that's the thing, when you said in the beginning that you open it up and you feel like the old guy at the disco, that's exactly what happens when you start TikTok, because TikTok shows you the popular videos, the kids dancing. I actually started a new page for a local mountain festival the other day, and so when I started it, all I was getting was pictures of girls dancing with not very much on and boobs in my face, and I was like, well, no, what's this? I don't get this on my account. And I don't get this on my account because I've built my account to suit what I like. And the followers, the For You page, as it's called on TikTok, understands, the algorithm is very clever. It understands what you like because it wants to keep you on the app. So it shows you more videos of ones you've watched all the way through. It shows you more of that. It shows you stuff that it knows you like. So after a while, it does come back. And actually, I turned my TikTok on this morning and I got a lot of author stuff because I follow authors. I got a lot of writing chat, editing chat, things like that. There's if the kids are still out there dancing in bikinis, I don't see it. Let's put it that way. So we've developed it. It's developed into my app. Yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, we've got some listener questions, so I suggest we go through these because they've been brilliant. They cover pretty much everything. Thank you, everyone. This really saved me a lot of preparation. So let's go through these. We'll start with Christopher Wills, who I think this is a fair question. Chris says, ignore this question if it doesn't work, but what's the difference between TikTok and Instagram? And maybe you think, well, one's TikTok, one's Instagram. But Instagram has reels, it has videos. It's very similar in some ways. But what's the crucial difference between the two that you found?
Okay, so we are talking about, let's just not mince about it. We're talking about selling books, aren't we? Mm-hmm. We're talking about getting out there and being seen, being heard, and getting our voices out there. And that's what TikTok can do, I think, far better than Instagram. Because what happens with TikTok primarily is that you see videos of people who you've not seen before. It shows you new stuff that it thinks you're interested in. I don't have 250,000 friends out there in real life that I can connect to like you do on Facebook, or Instagram. Instagram does do that in a way, but when you go on Instagram, when you open the app, what you find is people who you have chosen to follow and hashtags that you have chosen to follow. And it's a lot harder to then see new things, new ideas. Whereas TikTok has flipped that and it's all about the new stuff, what you haven't seen. And so it will show you new things and it will show you to new people. And that's where I think TikTok has an advantage in that you're seen by more and different people.
It's interesting because Instagram has started to do that. It started showing you, because you like this, we're showing you this.
Yeah.
And it's annoying people on Instagram because they go, no, I just want that focus. I just want to look at these particular things. Whereas TikTok is seems to be, much more of there's much more of a lively algorithm, I guess. So I guess it's horses for courses, isn't it?
Yeah, and Twitter's the same. I found when Twitter started showing me tweets that other people had liked, I was like, what about the people I've chosen to follow? Where have they gone? So I think it's what people expect from the app. So yeah, it's accepted on TikTok, but that's what happens.
Excellent. Okay. Got a few questions from Rhoda Baxter. Rhoda says, if you're an author, should you only follow readers or both readers and authors? And this sort of ties into a bit of an ongoing debate. I've heard some authors say, TikTok is only for readers. Leave it to the readers. Don't bother. But you've obviously done incredibly well out of it. So should you follow readers and authors? Is there some sort of etiquette there?
Etiquette doesn't exist. It just isn't. It just isn't. Everyone goes on about this thing that is book talk, this thing that is also. It's all bullshit. It's just made up bubbles that people are in. And you know what? Once you get into a bubble, you don't start seeing new ideas and new things. I don't see the point of going on there and only following other authors. Okay, other authors read books and we share and we help each other, and that's a wonderful bubble and community to be in. It's brilliant. But if you want to sell more and you want to get out there, you have to go further than that. And it's a little bit like the whole question of where do you get your ideas from when it comes to actually writing? Well, you don't get them by staring at a blank page, and you don't get them necessarily by chatting to other authors. You get them by reading newspapers, by taking in other cultural events, by going places, by doing other things. That's where your ideas come from. And to solely just sit in this little bubble doesn't make any sense to me. So follow who the hell you like. Does it matter that I'm trying to sell books, but I follow Hull City Football Club? That's an admission I didn't think I'd make today, but I do. I go out, and I follow that, and I see those things, and I do other things. It's not just about your little world of doing that. You just go and see other things, do other things. That's where your ideas come from. That's where you meet other people who have similar interests in other matters, and then you make more friends that way, and it builds. You know what? If you're going to stay in your own little bubble, you're not going to break out from that and see more things.
Excellent. Good stuff. Rhoda also asks, is there a TikTok etiquette, there's that word again, to contacting people about ARCs, advanced reading copies? So is this the sort of thing where you're being bombarded with people saying, give me a free book?
I never have. I've never been asked for a book. There's a thing about TikTok. You can make comments on videos, but you can only directly message somebody if you are mutually following. Yeah. So I get DMs a lot asking for things, but generally it's the same as everywhere else. You just got to be a normal, nice, kind human being and interact in the way that you would normally interact with other people. And that's when you get nice responses and good responses, So when I say there's no etiquette, I mean, it's the etiquette of life, isn't it?
Well, yes,
there's yourself, and you've got to.
My one rule to my children is don't be a dick, and
Indeed, and it's the same online, and you'll get the same response online if you are.
Yeah, exactly. Rhoda goes on to ask, what's the best way to get past the 250 views choke point? So are you aware of this choke point? Do you know about this, and how does one break through it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that TikTok has changed a lot. I've been on there for 3 years. So that's something that we didn't really say, that I've been doing this consistently day in, day out for 3 years. Like, I have made sure that I've been consistent with it. And so, I've built a following in that way. This hasn't happened overnight. So there are definitely videos that I make that have a better response than others. Videos, I mean, if you were to go onto my TikTok, you'd see that the stories that I tell, they tend to do very well. Stories where I put a background in, like a green screen background with a picture of a Tudor monarch or something, they tend to do really well. Sitting in front of my row of books doesn't tend to do as well. It's funny. I start with a silly comment to begin with. A lot of my videos in that vein, I say, shall we dig up a body, or shall we open a coffin, or something like that. That gets attention. People they know what they're going to get from me then. Some people do get disappointed. We didn't open a coffin. And you have to subscribe to that on my YouTube. That one, that's special stuff. But no, and in terms of getting past that, you know what? I think you have to show your face. There are a lot of people that say you don't have to. You can just like show a picture of a book, or show your garden, or show you're pouring a beer or making a coffee. Those sorts of things. Yeah, they can. You can tell stories over the top of them with a voiceover. But when I really started to do well, strangely enough, was when I started to show my face, because not because it's beautiful, but because I became a real person to them.
Yeah.
And that helps. And I think that TikTok is not really it's not Instagram. I don't do my hair and start doing my makeup before I go to TikTok. Maybe if I did, I'd have 1 million followers. But it's not like that. It's more about the content and what you're saying and that sort of thing. So getting over that choke point, there are some tricks. There are definitely some tricks. I often have something silly in my, I got a mug the other day I was in London, and I got a mug that was covered in skulls, bones and stuff. And I was drinking from that. Don't mention it, but it gets lots of comments. It's little things like that you learn to put in. And I think the absolutely best way to get views and traction is to make a mistake.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example?
Well, yeah. Okay. So I made a video recently about Marie Curie. Marie Sklodowska-Curie is what I should have said. And I upset the whole Polish nation by...
Don't do that. Don't upset Poland.
By making her French. And they were right. They were right. I should have gone with her wishes. It was a less than 60-second video. And I got a lot of grief for that. So things like that, that's not intentional. I didn't do that on purpose.
No,
but I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek that the moment I made a video once about Catherine Parr, I think it was, and I accidentally put up a picture behind me of Anne Boleyn. Like, it wasn't as bad as that, but it was something along those lines that upset a lot of people. So, it is tongue-in-cheek, but making mistakes is always the best way for people to come along and tell you you're wrong.
Right. Now, briefly, you mentioned YouTube there.
Yeah.
Is that where you're keeping extended versions of these videos? Are you sort of funneling people from TikTok into YouTube?
I started doing that a wee while ago, but then I had some months where I wasn't very well and it just dwindled off. And I think that a lot of people are asking me for that. But it's hard work. I think the more time I spend doing that, as you'll know with the podcast, the more time I spend doing that, the less time I'm doing writing. Yeah. Which is what I want to be doing. And, not just the non-fiction. The non-fiction stuff is great. The deals are wonderful. But I have got fiction ideas as well. And they're just kind of get pushed down the list, don't they? The more you start doing things like that. Yeah. Yeah. So someone did ask actually, how much time do you allocate as well? That was one of the questions.
Yes.
And the answer is not a huge amount, because you can go too far. I could spend all day doing it, but what's the point in that if I'm not then writing another book? So yeah, I do have some videos on TikTok on YouTube where I've extended thoughts and ideas, but it's not a huge thing for me personally. Yeah,
that's it's a question from Rachel Howes, who said, how much time do you allocate to TikTok related activity? Is this something where you carve half an hour out in a day or an hour? Yeah. How much time is it taking up of your day?
When I started making the history videos, I'm not going to lie, I was doing like 3 or 4 a day. It was but we were in lockdown. There was nothing else. My kids are old enough they were kind of sitting next to me studying, that I wasn't doing anything else but doing that. And that's probably one of the things that helped me establish myself so early on, because I had that time. But then I got the first book deal and I had to say, oh, hang on a minute, that 3, 4, 5 hours a day on that, well, I've got to write the book now. That I've done the work to get the deal, I've got to go in. Because of course these deals are done on can't think of the word, proposal. The book's not written yet.
Yes.
So I spend about half an hour a day where I sit down, I decide what I'm going to do the video on, I write a wee script. I write fewer scripts now because I've kind of got it down to a bit of an art with my own videos as to what I'm going to do. So I write sort of fewer lines and I just sit down and talk now. But in the beginning, there were times when I would do 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 takes because I couldn't get it right. But you can stop and start your videos. I have this thing where I just wanted to be able to speak for 60 seconds and make it smooth and make it look like I wasn't stopping just stop all the time, because that irritated me when other people did it. But half an hour a day. And you know what? There are people that will say, well, that's a lot. Don't think I can find that. But this is my marketing plan. So this is...
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to do it at the end of the writing day, and I would talk about what I'd written that day. And I, like you, I scripted it, and I would put it on there's a little teleprompter app that scrolls the words down. So I would like to get that really speeds things along, and it helps you get it in one take if you can. But it just became one of those things. You miss one at the end of the day, then you miss two at the end of the day, and then you just don't bother.
Absolutely.
So you do have to. And I wasn't doing anything with green screen or anything interesting like that either. So I was clearly doing a lot of it wrong. A couple more questions from Rhoda. Rhoda says, "Is there a way to make the videos in Canva and then schedule on TikTok, and any tips on scheduling TikToks in general?" So what are you using to create the videos? Is it Canva, or are you just using the app?
I create all my videos in app.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that I could do wonderful things elsewhere if I had the inclination, but I just go into the app and use that, because they now have, you can now caption your videos. You can now make them more accessible. In the beginning, that was rough with TikTok. They weren't very accessible. Now you can caption, you can do more things. And I've learned from the users, I've learned from my followers, some things that don't work using certain colors, and that they're less accessible for some people. So the app itself now is actually pretty good for just producing the sort of videos that I produce. But you can get more elaborate. You can be more interesting, probably, using Canva. You can do green screen stuff. You can bring in pictures of your books all that sort of stuff. You can definitely do that in Canva. I haven't done it, but I've seen it done because I've seen videos on TikTok of people showing you how to do that.
Okay.
So you can go onto TikTok and find how to do it on there.
Yeah.
It's all within there. In terms of scheduling, I don't schedule in terms of saying, right, this one's going to go out at 3:15. Mark it on the computer to do that. I don't do that. But what I do is, you can, I might say you have to do it on the app on your PC. You can't do it on an app on the phone.
Right.
But I do keep an eye on certain things. Mainly, you can look in your analytics and you can go to your followers and see where your followers are and what time they are mostly online. It tells you. So there's this gap there's a sort of lull in my followers. They tend to be not there between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. And I think that's because half my followers are American.
Right. Okay.
And Canadian. So they're kind of in bed. So I don't tend to post around that time. I tend to leave it until later on in the day. But that's my following. And that's something that is sort of self-perpetuating, because if I don't leave it till later in the day, I'm going to get more American followers.
Yeah.
But that's fine because we're global.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do keep an eye on that. And I have noticed that if I post something at this time, well, we're talking at 11 o'clock in the morning. If I post something at 11 o'clock in the morning, it's not going to get as many followers or comments or interaction. I do see that. But that's something that I now have because I've built that up. If you're just starting, I just go with the flow. Just exactly. Do it. Just try it. There's no rules. We don't know how it really works behind the scenes.
Just to go back, you mentioned captioning then, and the other thing with captioning listeners is, one, there's an accessibility thing, which is great, and people can read the subtitles, but also it's great for SEO, because if you've got captions out there, Google sends its algorithms out to find those keywords that are in your video and helps bring people to you as well. So that's going to help an awful lot. And
there's a fair bit of chat about SEO and TikTok at the moment, that they're kind of pushing that as well. So in your captions, in your descriptions, and that they're being seen more on Google searches and what have you. Yeah.
Brilliant. One last question from Rhoda, which is, what's the good balance between buying my book and other stuff, like lip syncing and what have you? So, having looked at your videos, you're right. You ask a question, you say, shall we dig up a body? Shall we open a coffin, kind of thing? But those all seem to tie in to your books, and in some ways it might be a bit easier with nonfiction because you've
Absolutely.
got all these different kings and queens and wonderful stories already. But what kind of balance do you have between the marketing stuff and the Suzie Edge stuff, the lifestyle stuff?
I think that what I think and what actually other people see are two different things, because I had this discussion with my publicist at Headline. I said, I'm talking about it too much. I'm going to annoy people. And she said, you're really not. Talk about it more.
Yeah.
I didn't know whether that was her just being a publicist or whether or not she was not seeing what I was thinking. I feel like I'm constantly being buy my book, but I don't think I've ever actually gone on there and said buy my book. I have unfollowed other authors who just make videos saying, here's my book, buy my book. I don't even know what your book's called or what it's about.
Yeah.
Tell me stories.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll get to that balance in a second, but one thing that I was very much aware of when we decided to have this chat and this deep dive was that my content at the moment is geared towards promoting my nonfiction book. And I have, therefore, endless history stories, endless number of history stories. They're just there for me to tell the stories. But I might add that, I'm writing, so my fiction book at the moment, it's based in 1810. So again, it's historical, fair enough, but there's body snatching and there's illicit whiskey distilling and there's all this sort of stuff. There are stories there, and they're only 60 seconds. Like, they don't even have to be 60 seconds long. They can be shorter. You can make them longer, but they're there. Those stories are there. And I think that whatever field you're in, you can tell those stories. And maybe not necessarily those stories, but I was watching, Marion Keyes is on TikTok. She made a video this morning. She was telling a story about a couple of actors and how they were interacting when they were rehearsing, and that made her think about how she was going to develop one of her characters. So if you're going to talk about author things like Marion Keyes does, you can bring those stories in as well. So there is content there. There's definitely content there. It's just, we're writers. We make things up. Let's make things up. We can do it. We can make stories. We don't have to just be standing there going, buy my book. I tell you what, I did have a run of videos I made not so long ago where I was just coming on and saying, this is my daily update. I've written 400 words today, and they just bombed. Didn't do well at all. Nobody was really fast. And I think that's because...
That's what I was doing.
Yeah, see,
it's a learning experience.
We have all other authors in there who go, because they understand. Totally understand. But actually everyone else is just like, well done. Yeah. What was it about? Tell us the story. What was it about? And you can't go on and say, I wrote 400 words today and this is what I wrote. And it's not it has to be a bit more creative than that. But other stories or, behind the scenes stuff, people do like that. So I do. It's like the video the other day Andy shared on the BXP page, didn't he? He shared my video of my book being made.
Yes.
And boy, did I squeal when I got that. But it was sent to me and I shared it, but I didn't say, look, my book's being made by it. I shared it and said how it made me feel. Yeah. And it made me feel incredible. It made me feel, this was a dream come true. Seeing that video was a dream come true. Oh my God. When the books come through, when the box of books comes through, there's going to be some serious sniffing going. But I shared how it made me feel. Yeah. And I think that goes down well. And I said thank you to the people that, my followers. Thanks, guys, for buying this book, because we've sold a lot of copies, more than we thought we would pre-order, and it made me feel amazing. And I had to share that. And I think there was somebody I was listening to on the bestseller experiment. Might have been an old one now, but it was somebody else online who you were talking to, very much in the same vein, not on TikTok, but maybe elsewhere. It was behind the scenes. It was, this is how this makes me feel. This is what we're doing. It was sharing the moment and the journey. One of the very first things that my editor said to me when I first spoke to him was, I was amazed. I was just like, what's going on? And he said, people like to feel part of something. And I really held on to that and made that part of when I talk to people online now, I tell them how they've been involved, as my followers, how they've been involved, how we've got this far, how they've made my dream come true, and how we've got this far. And that sort of thing really resonates. So balance, I don't know. It's hard to tell if I've got a balance. I feel like I'm brabbiting on about it too much. Others maybe not so much. Someone did comment on my TikTok the other day, less book, more history. Right.
But that's one comment. That's one comment.
It is one comment out of hundreds, and that is a whole different story, isn't it? How people react to you online and how you react to them is a whole different deep dive, isn't it? But that's the balance. There has to be a balance. There has to be more than just buy my book, because people get bored with that. Yeah.
Cool. I got a question from Jeff, which is, how do you think up content for videos? Now, you've got this sort of rich seam of history with all these kings and queens and monarchs, and as you say, every year has its own story. Do you plan them out much in advance, or were you just being inspired, as you said, by those numbers, by those dates and the numbers of followers? How has that changed and evolved over time?
In the beginning, I started because with our monarchs, it's this whole thing. It's not like I've had to come up with a plot. I just wrote a book that was chronological, and every chapter was a different monarch. It was great. No editorial messing around with that. So I had all those, and I was working my way through them to begin with, just from the beginning, 1,000 years ago. And then people make comments, and people say, "Have you thought about this? Have you looked at that?" And a lot of the time, I hadn't come across these stories, so I was going off and researching them, coming back and making videos about them. So a lot of my content actually comes from what people have said to me and people ask me, which is great because they're providing they're providing all that. Other times one of those stories, I'll go away and look it up. And, if you go to a blog that says 10 things you didn't know about Westminster Abbey, and you read that blog and you get to the bottom of that blog, it'll give you, here's 5 other things you might be interested in. And so I sometimes just sit there with my iPad and just, okay, go and have a look. And I find stories like that, I just follow the blogs and these stories come up and people tell me things, people ask me questions. I do a lot of answering of questions. Another question was, how do you avoid being repetitive? And I don't, I just be repetitive.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the same reason that we were talking about at the beginning about the difference between Instagram and TikTok. A lot more different people see your videos on TikTok. Somebody yesterday commented on one of my videos, "What's your book called?" And I thought it was a joke because I talk about my book all the time. I thought they were joking. I was like, ha, all right, I'm sorry. And they were like, "No, genuinely, what's it called? I've just found you on TikTok. Like, you need to tell me this." So new people see your stuff all the time. So I am quite repetitive and it doesn't drive people away.
No, it's interesting. That's something we see on Twitter as well, is we assume that talking about, we've mentioned something once and we think everyone has seen it, and that's clearly not the case. I mean, I've got I tweet about my books pretty much every day, and on the day of publication of the latest one, someone who follows me and has read the other book said, "Oh, you got a new book out? I had no idea." So I think we assume we're carpet bombing and doing far too much of this stuff, but it is a gushing river of content, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And I think I could do more. I could do more.
Yeah.
But I do have other things to do with my day.
So. Exactly. It was Angela Nurse who asked a question about being repetitive, but she also goes on to say, do you have any tips for a fiction-only author about content? Now, we've sort of touched on this in that you want people to feel like they're part of something. Have you come across any authors, fiction authors online who do this particularly well? And if so, what sort of thing do they do?
Yeah, so I follow quite a few, and not just fiction, but also editors as well. So I can come to that after. But who's on? So friend of BXB, Liz Phoenix, she's on TikTok. She tells she talks about the writing process and what have you, and then occasionally it'll be there's a book. I think that's a really good balance for her. Dorothy Coomson, who's just released a book, My Other Husband. She's Dorothy Coomson _author. I think she's just joined TikTok. I think she's being really creative. She's doing it really well. Again, it's like wandering into Waterstones. I think that was the most recent one I'd seen of hers, and signing a book, and it was done really well. She's been great. So I was in W.H. Smith's, I think, a couple of months ago, and I picked up a Colleen Hoover book. And I know she's prolific, but then I got the book home and I looked at it and it said, "The TikTok Sensation." And I was like, "The what?" I didn't know that. So I then went and found her on TikTok, and she's got over 1 million followers.
Right.
Now, I don't know what came first. I suspect because she's a prolific author, she has now got lots of followers on TikTok. I don't think it happened the other way around. But she's got some interesting things on there. Again, there's a mixture of silly things that she's doing, and then she's suddenly, there's a book. So that works well for her. Mitch Benn, funny, isn't he? Funny guy. He's been on the podcast. He's on TikTok. He was making videos recently about language, words, accents.
Right.
Really clever stuff. Doesn't mention the writing, until later on. Oh, look, buy my book. Once you've got a following, once you've got an interest. So he's really good. There's an author who I follow called Fiona Lucas, who is very good as well. She's very good at answering questions. So Fiona Lucas, author. And who else? There's an author called Suzie K. Quinn, who is prolific as well. She sold millions of books, I think. And they're all very different. Some of them, like Mitch Ben, talk about other things, language, accents, and what have you, and others talk specifically about writing. I mentioned Marion Keyes earlier.
Mm-hmm.
She just tells me stories about the writing process and how she's getting on. This whole idea that you have to be part of Book Talk, I don't even know what that means. It's just a hashtag. Just follow it, don't follow it, don't join in, do join in. I don't know.
Yeah, there's not some coven that meets,
Definitely not.
In a moonlit glade. Rachel Howes was saying, do you find some content or themes create more of a reaction than just views? So you're kind of touching on it there in that, you've got Mitch Ben, who's a funny guy, he's a writer, he's a musician, but he's talking about unusual stuff that's surprising you might not think of him for. But are you what's the content that you're creating that's getting the most kind of reactions?
When I tell the stories. So when I have videos where I have a little snippet of, so the stories for most people won't have seen it, but the stories tend to be about how somebody died or how somebody had a particular disease. They last, I keep them under 60 seconds. I tell a wee snippet at the beginning. This is what's going to happen. Tell the story, make a silly remark at the end. Those are the stories that tend to do really well. Having said that, within that, because it's niche, people very much like the Tudors. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge Tudor fan. I like swimming around more in the 19th century, but people like that stuff. And so I turn that into a bit of a joke that, not another question about Anne Boleyn. Like, I don't want to talk about Anne. And this has become a bit of a running theme with my followers that I hate the Tudors, and I don't, but I thought I'd turn it into that. They always do well. When I make Tudor videos, they always do really well. Ironically, I got asked by a TV production company to go and talk on a historical documentary about Anne Boleyn.
Wow.
Well, you're not listening to me, but it's just a joke. So those telling the stories for me, telling the stories does really well. And if you look back right at the beginning, my videos were rushed. Get this done, get this out the door, and they've evolved. And so, because I've had people say, but you're quite good at storytelling and talking, and I'm like, yeah, but it's evolved. I wasn't like that in the beginning. Taken me 3 years.
Well, let's talk about, Rachel says, what are your top 3 don'ts? What are the things you shouldn't be doing on TikTok?
Okay. I hadn't seen that question. What are the top 3 don'ts?
Yes. We mentioned the buy my book thing. That clearly is off-putting to people.
It's very off-putting, standing there, especially on TikTok, which flicks the perspective.
Flicks the book round, yeah. So the book is backwards.
So if you're going to do it, you have to do it the other way, which completely throws me, because after 3 years of using it flipped, I turn it round and I look different. I can't get my head around that, literally. So yeah, standing there saying buy my book, that's really annoying. Just, you know what? There's a group of people who tend to just have the app and all you got is their iPhone. And they're just like, today I'd like to hello, my name's John, buy my book. Drives me potty. There's one guy actually I follow who is an American science fiction author, and he starts every video with, "Hi, I'm science fiction author Patrick F. Johnson," and I'm like, "That's nice. Move on," because I know that. Like, you can tell me something different, so different. What else? Don't. I think it's kind of a do just be yourself.
Yeah.
You can't put on a persona, because what I'm saying is that this has taken me 3 years to get to this point. And if I had been in the beginning pretending to be someone else, I'd be still acting that 3 years on. And that's hard work.
Yeah.
You have to be yourself, and you have to talk about what excites you and what interests you, because that's what will excite somebody else and interest somebody else. And if you're starting to copy others, it just gets, what's the point of that? So don't just blindly copy. Find your own thing.
Brilliant. Brilliant answer.
Don't dance in bikinis. It's been done.
Again, it didn't work for me. Rachel asks, how does your activity on TikTok compare to other social media platforms? So are you still putting content out there on Twitter and Facebook? Are you using TikTok content on those platforms? Is that working for you?
I do take my TikTok content and I put it on Instagram Reels and I put it on YouTube Shorts. And I do that because I've been asked to by followers who have followed me on TikTok and then gone and found me on other apps and said, look, don't use TikTok anymore. I'm not a fan, but I like to see your content. So I do put it out there. I do get more followers. I do get a few followers on Instagram because of each reel that I put out. It has the TikTok logo on it. There's advice to say, don't do that, make content in the app. And I am not making this content 4 times. I don't have the time.
Yeah.
That's my cutoff. Some people can, I don't. So I do take it elsewhere. Twitter is, just funny, funny quips, lines. I tweet about other things. You might find me making a comment now and again about the Prime Minister. I don't tend to talk, but then I share my book stuff occasionally when there's news to share, got this new deal. Here's a book reveal. The book reveals, cover reveals on Twitter. They always do go down well. People like to look at them on Twitter, things like that. I don't tend to put my TikTok content on there. What I do share on Twitter is when I've had a really funny comment on TikTok. And by funny, I mean horribly abusive. or nice, or I balance them out. There's some really I go, oh look, I had a lovely one today. But when I get really abusive ones, I'm like, that's hilarious. That's being shared with the world. And do I blank out their name? No, I don't, because they put it out there in the world to see. So I'm going to go and share elsewhere. And that brings in a kind of element of people feel sorry for me, and they're like, oh, I feel. And I'm like, don't, because it goes over my head. Which is something else I've learned, to have a thick skin and let it go over my head. So Twitter, it's all sorts of stuff on there. Instagram, I share the occasional, again, the sort of stuff, the traditional sort of stuff on the Instagram and Twitter. It's, those sorts of photographs and live stuff as well. Other more personal things.
Yeah. Excellent. It's a combination of blending the two. That's all good stuff. Rachel also asks about your reach on TikTok and how that affects sales. Now, you mentioned earlier that your pre-orders are beyond what your publisher expected, so this has clearly had an effect on sales. Are you able to see a direct line between your TikTok and sales?
Because I don't have a huge reach elsewhere on Instagram and Twitter, TikTok's my main reach. So we can see a direct link when so have we got time for a slightly longer story?
Go for it.
When I had the deal for Mortal Monarchs, it was UK Commonwealth rights. And this has been a whole new world to me, a whole learning experience, which has been wonderful. But I went onto my TikTok and I said, I've got this deal. We're going to write this book. It's going to be amazing. Forgetting that half of my followers were in America. So my followers in America are like, where's the book? It's not on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
It's not there. Where is it? What have I done? So I got together with Goldsboro and kind of said, well, to my American followers, I said, look, if you're willing to pay for shipping, go to Goldsboro and we will have a limited edition signed, etc.
Brilliant.
So I made a video saying that, and then almost instantly there were comments on my videos which were saying it's sold out. I said, it can't be sold out, whereas this is pre-order. So I went back to Goldsboro and I said, look, it says it's sold out, because of course Goldsboro go onto their system and they say, oh, well, we might sell 50 of these. And now every time I make one of those videos, I have to contact Goldsboro first to say, can you make sure the numbers are up, because they keep getting sold out. So it's not direct per se, but we can see how making a video has an effect. And now I think Goldsboro bought 750 or something compared to the original 50. So that's the beauty of this, that I can see. And I can see, obviously we have the publishers are telling me as well what's coming through on Amazon, etc. So I can see it's not absolute direct numbers, but yeah, it's nice to see a sort of cause and effect, to see how it works.
That is brilliant. That's fantastic. Final question from Jackie, who she says, are you aware of any resources that discuss the TikTok basics? So did you just learn by sort of tinkering and experimenting, or are there places you can go where someone explains this stuff to you in a bit more detail?
I'm sure you probably can go to YouTube, like anything in the world.
Yes. It's always a YouTube video. Yeah.
There's always a YouTube video. However, I learned most of the tips and tricks from TikTok itself. Like, you're in there, you can follow, you can search, you can follow, you can look for marketing tips, you can look for how to use, literally just search how to use TikTok within TikTok. You'll find people make basics videos. Anything that you're looking for is in the app. It sort of serves itself, and you can go in there and search for. So I mentioned earlier, I follow some editors in there. You get a 60-second video from a book editor, and suddenly it's like, oh, I need to, that's great, good information, that sort of thing. You can search for that. So if you go into the app itself, you don't have to be making your own content, but you can be consuming, you can be using, you can go and search for all that stuff and you'll see it. And within there, you'll find all sorts of hints and tips. And this works, that doesn't work, what's trending, what's to avoid. You'll find people who are there just making videos about how to use TikTok.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Suzie, this has been eye-opening, and I got a horrible feeling I'm going to have to go back to TikTok. But rather than wearing a bikini and just telling people my word count, I need to put a bit more thought into this. So this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and experience with us. And folks, Mortal Monarchs is out there now, and it looks absolutely brilliant. And your videos are just fantastic. So this has been a joy. What's coming next? Suzie? What else should we be looking out for?
Well, I'm not allowed to say yet.
Oh, that's exciting.
Because we only had this. Well, actually, by the time this comes out, there probably will be more out there. But no, I've just signed another deal for a follow-up to Mortal Monarchs, which I'm very, very excited about. Let's just say there are more body parts to talk about, which just I'm going to have so much fun with, because I got an email from my editor and he said, I raised body parts at the acquisition meeting. That's superb.
That's what we want.
So yeah, there's lots of that coming. And also, because of the Bestseller Experiment podcast, I am about 70,000 words into a novel as well, which is just going swimmingly. So maybe.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, Suzie, it's been brilliant talking to you today, and hope to speak to you again real soon.
I hope it's been helpful.
Definitely.